All right, so I've saved some of the best stuff for last. The final topic that we're going to hit for our DAX demos is time intelligence. Now, time intelligence functions allow you to easily calculate common time comparisons. Now, these are all built on the DAX calculate function, and they're all extremely flexible and easy to use. So the first one that we're going to talk about is performance to date. So it's going to start with that calculate function. We're going to be calculating some measure, whatever you choose. Could be orders, could be revenue, returns, profit, whatever it might be. And then we're going to use the dates YTD function in here and point to a date field in a calendar table. Now, dates YTD calculates a year-to-date total, but you can swap in other variations like dates QTD for quarter-to-date or dates MTD for month-to-date. The second time intelligence formula that we'll look at is the previous period. So again, starts with calculate, measure. In this case, we're going to use a date add function, point to a calendar date field, and then add 2 additional arguments at the end of the function. An interval type could be day, month, quarter, or year, and the number of intervals that you'd like to compare. So the example we're looking at here is basically calculating the measure for the previous month. So in this case, if you're calculating a revenue measure and you wanted to change this from previous month's revenue to yesterday's revenue, you would simply change that month interval to day and you're done. Then the third one that we're going to look at is a running total. And this one just has one additional function built in, starts with calculate. We're going to use the dates in period function, point to a date field, and then it just has one additional argument for that max function, followed by the same 2 final arguments, the interval type and the number of intervals. So the version shown here is a 10-day running total. You could change it to -6 and month to create a 6-month running total. And little pro tip, you can easily convert running totals into moving averages by taking that entire running total function and then dividing by that same number of intervals that you're using. So all of these are extremely flexible. They make it very easy to build out many different variations of time intelligence fields with very little effort. Now, my recommendation is not to worry so much about memorizing all of these. It can be really hard to keep track of whether you're going to use dates in period or date add and so on and so forth. To be honest, I have this sheet printed out. I refer back to this slide all the time. So it can be helpful to almost think of these as recipes that you consult when you need to build out these time intelligence formulas. So let's head over to the AdventureWorks file and build out some of these for ourselves. All right, so once you're in your AdventureWorks report, we're on the report pane, and let's edit our matrix. I want to set up a view that's going to be helpful to see these time intelligence functions. So I don't want to view the data by category anymore. Let's get rid of that. And we don't need quantity. We'll keep total revenue, and let's navigate to our calendar lookup and grab start of month and drop it into rows. Now what you'll notice is that it's created this hierarchy automatically, and it's trying to be helpful. It's kind of collapsed it into years by default. If you don't want that, click the little down arrow and just say, don't give me the hierarchy, just give me the original field, start of month. And that will show me monthly level data through my whole sample. So there we go, monthly revenue. It's a good starting point to start working with these time intelligence functions. So let's go ahead and just kick things off in our sales data table. I'm going to right click, add a new measure, and let's start this one with year-to-date revenue. So we're going to name it something like YTD revenue. It's going to start with calculate, they all do. And the measure that we're evaluating is our total revenue measure. And now for the year-to-date time intelligence function, we use the dates YTD function. And we'll just point it to our calendar lookup date field. And remember, it gives me these options if I want to aggregate. In this case, I don't. So all I need to do is close out 2 parentheses and press enter. And now watch this. My matrix, I'm going to grab YTD revenue here at the bottom of my field list, the end of my sales table since it's alphabetical. I'm going to drag it right beneath total revenue in the matrix. And now you can see that it seems to be working properly. First month of the year, total and year to date are the same. Second month, year to date is adding the first two together. And then it builds and builds and builds until the final month of the year and then resets the next year. Now, a little teaser for one of the topics we're going to talk about in the next section, the whole data viz section, is a little formatting tool. If we click into this format pane, conditional formatting, I want to format the year-to-date revenue field with data bars. So check this out. This really visualizes how this year-to-date function is working. It builds and builds and builds and then resets. Builds, 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 resets. So if we changed our formula to month-to-date revenue and broke this down by day or week, you'd see that same trend just at a more granular level. So pretty cool stuff there. Let's go ahead and keep cruising ahead, add another measure, and this time I want previous month. So prev month revenue. Starts with calculate. And again, total revenue is the measure we care about. And for this one, we use date add. Open parenthesis, point to our calendar, date field, and then I'm just going to comma right over to get to my last two arguments of this function, the number of intervals and the interval type. So starting with the number of intervals, I'm looking to evaluate that measure for 1 month in the past. So since it's only one period and it's in the past, my number of intervals is -1. And my interval can be day, month, quarter, or year. So I'm just going to select month, tab it in, close out two parentheses, and that should just about do it. So you can see how easy it would be if I changed my mind and said, okay, instead of previous month, our AdventureWorks clients really want to see year over year trending. So we need this to actually be previous year. All we would have to do is literally change this last argument from month to year, and we're done. It's that simple. So in this case, I'm happy with previous month revenue. Press enter to lock that one in. And let's go back to our fields pane here. And let's pull year to date out and grab that previous month revenue field that we just created and drop it in. So as you can see, because it's the previous month, it's just basically offset 1 month from the total revenue column, which is exactly what we'd expect. Now, this alone can be pretty helpful, but for our purposes, it's even more helpful because AdventureWorks has given us a pretty aggressive goal. And I don't know if you've heard yet, but they want us to maintain 10% revenue growth every single month moving forward. In other words, that's our revenue target, previous month plus 10%. Now, calculating a dynamic measure like previous month revenue is the perfect starting point for something like that, because now all we need to do is right-click to add a new measure and create something like revenue target equals that previous month revenue that I just created times 1.1. 110% of last month's revenue is my current target. We can enter that in. We can pull it into our matrix to take a look, and 110% of 585,000 is 643,844. So that adds up, and there we go. Now we have revenue target fields based on previous month revenue. Now, last demo here, let's right click, add a new measure. This time we're going to practice the rolling total, and let's do a 10-day rolling revenue. And that's going to use another one of our time intelligence functions, starting with calculate and total revenue, just like all the others. Now for this one, you remember, it starts with that dates in period function. Open it up, point to our date field, calendar date, and then this one has that extra argument for the start date, which is going to take a max function. and it's just the max of our calendar date. There we go. Close that parenthesis out for the max function, and then we comma over to those same two arguments that we had in our previous month revenue formula, the number of intervals and the type of interval. So because we're looking for 10-day rolling, you guessed it, the number of intervals is 10. And because we're looking at previous periods, that's a negative, so -10, and the interval type is day. So -10 for the number, and the interval itself, day. Two parentheses to close it out. I know I'm moving pretty quickly, so feel free to kind of pause the screen, slow down the audio. These time intelligence functions really just take practice before you start to feel natural. But there you have it. That's 10-day rolling revenue. Press enter to lock that measure in. And now because I'm looking at months, it's a little bit too high level here. So I'm going to pull out my previous month and revenue target. And instead of start of month, let's go up to our calendar and actually pull in the date itself. And again, it's going to automatically bucket things and roll them up. I only want the date. So there you go, total revenue by day. Now if we grab our 10-day rolling, drop it in under total revenue, you'll see that the first date is the same as total revenue. The second date adds the first two, third adds the first three, until you get to the first 10-day window. And then basically that 10-day rolling history just shifts right along, and you can track how you're performing over that 10-day window tracked over time. So a really helpful kind of trending analysis that we can use to keep a pulse on how AdventureWorks revenue is doing. So that wraps up time intelligence, and that actually wraps up all of our DAX demos for the course. Remember, this was just a sampling of some of the most common DAX functions. Things can get much deeper and much more complicated from here, but hopefully this has helped to lay the groundwork and create a great foundation for you to start from. With that, we're going to quickly talk about DAX best practices and speed and performance considerations, and then it's off to visualizing data with reports.